The alarm bells rang through the command center of the USS Valiant as Admiral Jake Morrison rushed to his station. The massive view screen flickered to life, showing a cascade of red warning lights across Earth's orbital defense grid. Something was coming through the deep space communication array, and it was not from any human colony or outpost. Lieutenant Sam Davis turned from his console with wide eyes. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on the Galactic Federation emergency frequency. It's using the Zilani translation protocol, sir." Morrison felt his stomach drop. The Zilani Republic had been humanity's first contact with alien civilization 3 years ago. They were a peaceful species of tall, blue-skinned beings who valued art and philosophy above all else. The fact that they were broadcasting on an emergency channel meant something terrible was happening. "Put it through the main speakers, Davis," Morrison ordered as he gripped the edge of his command chair. The voice that filled the command center was clearly alien, but the translation software made the words crystal clear. The speaker sounded desperate and frightened in a way that made the human crew members shift uncomfortably. "This is Prime Minister Keth Valorian of the Zilani Republic broadcasting on all emergency channels. Our worlds are under attack by an unknown force. They consume everything in their path, leaving only empty space behind. The combined fleets of the Galactic Federation have fallen. Billions of lives have been lost. We estimate 72 hours before our home system is overrun. If anyone receives this message, please help us. The enemy shows no mercy and takes no prisoners. They simply devour and move on to the next target." The transmission cut to static, leaving the command center in complete silence. Morrison stared at the view screen as his mind processed what he had just heard. The Galactic Federation was an alliance of 12 different alien species spanning hundreds of worlds. If their combined military forces had been defeated, then whatever. Was attacking them possessed power beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Captain Lisa Rodriguez entered the command center at a run. Her destroyer USS Lightning had been conducting patrol exercises near Jupiter when the alert went out. "Admiral, what's our status?" My communications officer picked up fragments of an alien distress call. Morrison gestured to the main screen, where Technical Officer Nancy White was already pulling up long-range sensor data. "The Zilani Republic is under attack by something they call a consuming force. Rodriguez, what are your sensors showing for?" "The outer system approaches?" Rodriguez moved to the sensor station and began working alongside White. After several minutes of adjustments and cross-referencing, both women turned to face the Admiral with grim expressions. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures approximately 40 light-years from Earth in the direction of Zilani space," White reported. "The readings are unlike anything in our databases. These objects appear to be the size of small moons, but they're moving at speeds that should be impossible for objects that large." Rodriguez pulled up a tactical display showing the estimated positions and vectors of the unknown contacts. "Admiral, based on the movement patterns and the timeline from the Zilani message, these objects are consuming entire star systems. Energy signatures suggest they're somehow harvesting matter and converting it directly into propulsion and growth." Commander Rick Thompson arrived from the Tactical Planning Center carrying a datapad filled with preliminary analysis. He was humanity's leading expert on alien military capabilities, and his face showed the kind of concern that made seasoned officers nervous. "Admiral, I've been reviewing everything we know about Galactic Federation military doctrine and capabilities." Thompson began as he activated a holographic display above the main conference table. Their fleets consist of energy-based weapon systems and defensive technologies that rely on deflector shields and armor plating. They fight according to established honor codes that emphasize direct confrontation and minimal civilian casualties. Morrison studied the holographic representations of various alien warships. "What's your assessment, Thompson? How did they lose so completely?" Sir, the Federation species have been at peace for over 2 centuries. Their military technology focuses on deterrence rather than destruction. They've never encountered an enemy that simply ignores their communication attempts and consumes everything in its path. Based on the Zelani transmission, this enemy adapts to whatever weapons are used against it and incorporates the technology into its own forces. The command center fell silent again as the implications sank in. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for such a short time that most people still thought of aliens as distant neighbors rather than close allies. But the Zelani had welcomed Earth with open arms and shared their knowledge freely. The idea that such a peaceful and advanced civilization could face extinction was almost impossible to accept. Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker from the Fleet Coordination Center joined the group around the tactical display. Admiral, I've been in contact with Fleet Command on Earth. They're authorizing the deployment of Third Fleet to respond to the Zelani distress call. 50 ships including the Valiant, 12 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, and support vessels. Morrison looked around at his senior staff. These were men and women who had trained for the possibility of defending Earth from hostile alien forces. None of them had expected to be called upon to defend alien civilizations from an unknown enemy that had already proven capable of destroying advanced military forces. Parker, what's the status of our fleet readiness? Sir, Third Fleet can be ready for immediate departure. All vessels are fully supplied and crews are at 100% strength. Estimated travel time to Zelani space is 18 hours using maximum hyperspace velocity. Dr. Amy Collins arrived from the science section carrying several data crystals, containing everything humanity knew about the enemy force. As the fleet's chief scientist, she had been analyzing the sensor data and alien transmissions since the first alert. Admiral, I've been studying the energy patterns from these consuming objects, Collins reported as she inserted a data crystal into the main computer system. Whatever they are, they don't follow conventional physics. The mass-to-velocity ratios suggest they're using some form of space-time manipulation to achieve their movement speeds. More concerning is that each object appears to be growing larger as it moves through space. Morrison studied the scientific readings with growing unease. Growing larger how? Sir, the objects appear to be incorporating the matter from destroyed worlds and ships directly into their own structure. They're not just destroying the Federation forces, they're literally eating them and becoming stronger. The Admiral walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, peaceful civilizations were being consumed by an enemy that treated entire worlds like food. The Galactic Federation had welcomed humanity as equals despite Earth's violent history. Now that same violent history might be the only thing that could save the galaxy. Thompson, Collins, Rodriguez, Parker, Morrison called out. I want complete tactical assessments of our fleet capabilities versus these unknown hostiles. We leave for Zelani space in 6 hours. Whatever is out there has never faced humanity in combat. It's time to show the galaxy what Earth's most lethal fleet can do. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Zelani territory and immediately faced a sight that none of them would ever forget. Floating in the void were the twisted remains of what had once been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Hundreds of alien warships drifted like broken toys, their hulls torn open and their crews long dead. Captain Steve Harris aboard the cruiser USS Ranger was the first to break the stunned silence over the fleet communication channel. Admiral, my sensors are detecting movement among the wreckage. Something is still active out there. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, watching the main screen as the tactical display updated with new contacts. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive biomechanical creatures, the size of space stations, were moving through the debris field like scavengers, but they were not just collecting the wreckage. They were eating it, Collins, are you seeing this? Morrison asked as Dr. Amy Collins worked frantically at her science station. Yes, sir, and it's worse than we thought, Collins replied without looking up from her instruments. Those creatures are not just consuming the wreckage. They're analyzing it, learning from it, and incorporating the technology directly into their own bodies. Every ship they devour makes them stronger and more advanced. Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker pulled up long-range scans on his tactical display. Admiral, I count at least 30 of those things in the immediate area. Each one is approximately 2 kilometers long and appears to be constructed from a mixture of organic tissue and metal components. The readings suggest they're still growing. Captain? Lisa Rodriguez from the destroyer USS Lightning reported in from her position on the fleet's left flank. Sir, I'm detecting energy signatures that match Federation weapon technology coming from inside those creatures. Whatever they consumed from the alien fleet, they've turned it into part of their own weapon systems. Morrison felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like never before. The enemy they faced was not just powerful, it was adaptive. Every conventional weapon the galaxy possessed had already been tested against these creatures and found wanting. Now those same weapons were being used against anyone foolish enough to challenge them. Thompson, what's your tactical assessment? Morrison asked his strategic commander. Commander Rick Thompson studied the sensor readings with the calm focus that had made him Earth's premier military analyst. Sir, these creatures operate as a collective intelligence. Notice how they move in perfect coordination without any visible communication between units. They've also positioned themselves to block any approach to the inner system where the Zelani home world is located. Dr. Collins looked up from her console with a mixture of fear and fascination in her eyes. Admiral, I've been analyzing their movement patterns and energy emissions. These biomechanical entities share a collective consciousness that allows them to process and adapt to new threats almost instantly. When one learns something, they all learn it. Morrison walked to the edge of the bridge and stared out at the alien graveyard. So every time the Federation forces tried a new tactic or weapon, the entire enemy fleet immediately knew how to counter it. Exactly, sir, Collins confirmed. It's the perfect military adaptation. No matter what strategy you use, the enemy learns and evolves to defeat it within moments. Captain Harris's voice crackled over the communication system with urgent news. Admiral, one of those creatures has detected our presence. It's moving this way, and it's accelerating fast. Morrison watched as the tactical display showed one of the massive biomechanical entities breaking away from the debris field and heading directly toward the human fleet. Its speed was increasing with each passing second as organic propulsion systems flared to life along its hull. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Morrison ordered. Do not engage the enemy. I repeat, do not fire on that creature. Captain Rodriguez's confused voice came through the speakers. Sir, with respect, that thing is going to be in weapons range in less than 3 minutes. Shouldn't we at least prepare for defensive action? Negative, Rodriguez, Morrison replied firmly. If we fire on that creature, it will learn everything about our weapons technology and share that information with the rest of its kind. We need to study them first before we give them the chance to study us. The alien creature approached the human fleet like a predator closing in on prey. Its biomechanical hull rippled with absorbed Federation technology, while organic sensors swept across the human ships like searching fingers. Morrison could feel the thing trying to understand what it was facing. Lieutenant Sam Davis at the communications station reported strange readings. Admiral, that creature is attempting to establish some kind of mental contact with our computer systems. It's like it's trying to download our tactical databases. Shut down all external communication arrays. Immediately, Morrison ordered. Thompson, Collins, I need options, and I need them fast. Thompson studied the creature's approach pattern with growing understanding. Sir, look at how it's moving. The creature is being cautious because we're not behaving like the Federation. Forces did. It expects us to either run away or attack directly. We're doing neither. Collins was running rapid calculations on her computer system. Admiral, the creature's collective consciousness is its greatest strength, but it might also be its weakness. If they all share the same knowledge and the same thought patterns, then they all have the same limitations. Morrison began to smile, as an idea formed in his mind. What kind of limitations, Collins? Sir, they think as one unified intelligence, which makes them extremely efficient at processing known threats. But unified thinking also means they have trouble dealing with truly random or chaotic behavior. They expect logical military responses, because that's all they've ever encountered. Captain Harris interrupted with an urgent report. Admiral, the creature is slowing down. It's maintaining distance, but it's not attacking. I think it's confused by our lack of response. Morrison looked around at his bridge crew and realized that humanity's greatest weakness might actually be their greatest strength in this situation. Every alien species in the galaxy followed logical military doctrines based on centuries of civilized warfare. But humans had spent their entire history fighting dirty, using deception, and breaking every rule of honorable combat. All ships maintain current positions, Morrison ordered. Thompson, I want you to develop a tactical plan based on one simple principle. These creatures expect logical military behavior, so we're going to give them chaos instead. Thompson's eyes lit up with understanding. Sir, are you suggesting we use unconventional warfare tactics? I'm suggesting we show these things what happens when they mess with the species that learn to fight by breaking every rule in the book. Morrison replied, Collins, how long do you need to analyze their collective consciousness network? Give me 12 hours, sir, and I can find a way to disrupt their shared intelligence. Collins answered. Morrison nodded as he watched the alien creature hovering just beyond weapons range, clearly uncertain how to deal with prey that refused to. Behave predictably. You've got your 12 hours, Collins. After that, we're going to teach the galaxy a new way to fight wars. 12 hours later, Dr. Amy Collins stood before Admiral Morrison with data that would change everything. Her analysis of the biomechanical creatures had revealed something that no other species in the galaxy had discovered: a collective consciousness. That made them so powerful, also made them predictable in ways they could never imagine. Admiral, I've found their weakness, Collins announced as she activated the holographic display in the Fleet Command Center. The creatures share every piece of information instantly through quantum entanglement connections in their organic neural networks. This makes them incredibly efficient at adapting to known threats, but it also means they process information in completely logical patterns. Commander Rick Thompson leaned forward with interest. What does that mean for our tactical planning? Collins? Sir, it means they cannot understand or properly respond to truly irrational behavior, Collins explained as she showed brain scan patterns on the display. When faced with logical military tactics, they adapt perfectly. But when confronted with chaos, misdirection, or completely random actions, their collective mind struggles to find patterns that don't exist. Admiral Morrison studied the data with growing excitement. Collins, are you telling me that these creatures can be confused by unpredictable human behavior? More than confused, sir. I believe we can actually overload their collective consciousness by feeding them too much contradictory information at once. If we hit them with multiple completely different tactical approaches simultaneously, their shared intelligence network won't be able to process and adapt to all of them at the same time. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had been listening from her position on the USS Lightning, and her voice came through the communication system with barely controlled enthusiasm. Admiral, are you saying we can beat these things by fighting like humans instead of fighting like civilized aliens? Morrison smiled for the first time since arriving in Zelani space. Rodriguez, I'm saying we're about to show the galaxy why Earth never developed honor codes for warfare. Thompson, I want you to coordinate with all ship captains. Every vessel in this fleet is going to attack using completely different tactics at exactly the same moment. Over the next 6 hours, the human fleet spread out across the star system in what appeared to be a chaotic retreat pattern. The biomechanical creatures followed at a distance, clearly puzzled by the lack of organized formation or defensive positioning. Their collective consciousness was trying to predict human behavior based on patterns that simply did not exist. Captain Steve Harris aboard the USS Ranger had positioned his cruiser near a large asteroid field where he was preparing the most unconventional trap in military history. His engineering teams had spent hours attaching small fusion charges to dozens of asteroids, while his weapons crews programmed their targeting computers to ignore every rule of space combat ever written. Admiral, Ranger is in position, Harris reported. We've turned this entire asteroid field into the galaxy's largest improvised weapon system. When those creatures come through here, they're going to face kinetic bombardment from directions they never expected. Captain Rodriguez had taken her destroyer USS Lightning into the upper atmosphere of a nearby gas giant where the crushing gravity and toxic atmospheric conditions would destroy any normal spacecraft. But human ships had been designed to operate in the hostile environment of Earth's solar system, where radiation, gravity, and chemical hazards were constant threats. Lightning is ready, Admiral, Rodriguez announced. I'm going to use this planet's atmospheric pressure and chemical composition as weapons. The creatures have never encountered tactics that treat entire planets as ammunition. Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker was coordinating with the support vessels to create what he called a distributed confusion network. Instead of fighting like a unified fleet, each human ship would operate independently using tactics that contradicted everything the other ships were doing. Sir, we have 17 different attack plans ready for simultaneous execution, Parker reported. Every ship will be doing something completely different, and none of them follow standard military doctrine. The creatures won't be able to adapt to all of them at once. Dr. Collins had spent the preparation time developing her own contribution to the chaos. Admiral, I've created a computer virus designed specifically for their collective consciousness network. Instead of trying to destroy their communication system, this virus will flood it with false information and contradictory tactical data. Morrison looked out at the biomechanical creatures that were slowly surrounding the scattered human fleet. The aliens had no idea they were about to face something completely outside their experience. Every species they had encountered before fought according to established military traditions that emphasized honor, logic, and predictable tactical responses. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication channel. In 30 seconds, every vessel will begin independent attack operations using your assigned unconventional tactics. Remember, the goal is not just to win this battle, but to teach these creatures that humanity fights by different rules. The countdown began as human crews across the fleet prepared to unleash warfare techniques that had been developed through thousands of years of survival on a hostile planet. Earth had produced warriors who understood that victory was more important than honor, and that any tactic that saved lives was acceptable regardless of how other species might judge it. 10 seconds, Morrison announced as the biomechanical creatures began moving into attack positions based on their analysis of human fleet dispersal patterns. 5 seconds. All ships engage the enemy using maximum chaos protocols. The battle began unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Captain Harris detonated his asteroid field trap, sending massive rocks hurtling through space at velocities that turned them into planet-killing projectiles. The creatures tried to adapt their defensive systems, but the rocks were coming from dozens of different angles with no predictable timing or targeting pattern. Captain Rodriguez dove her destroyer through the gas giant's atmosphere while firing her weapons upward at creatures trying to follow her path. The atmospheric pressure crushed two of the biomechanical entities, while the toxic gases corroded their organic components faster than they could adapt to the chemical assault. Meanwhile, Dr. Collins launched her virus into the creature's collective consciousness network through a disguised communication probe. Within seconds, the shared intelligence system was flooded with false tactical assessments, contradictory threat analyses, and completely fabricated human fleet positions. The biomechanical creatures found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern. Every time their collective consciousness tried to adapt to one human tactic, three more completely different approaches would attack from unexpected directions. Their perfect adaptation system was overloading as it tried to process dozens of contradictory information streams simultaneously. For the first time since the invasion began, the consuming force that had destroyed the Galactic Federation was experiencing something it had never encountered before. The creatures were learning what it meant to fight against a species that had evolved through chaos and had never forgotten that survival mattered more than style. The success of the human fleet's chaotic assault spread throughout the remaining Federation forces like wildfire. For the first time since the invasion began, the biomechanical creatures were retreating in confusion instead of adapting and advancing. Admiral Morrison watched his tactical display as the enemy, collective consciousness, struggled to process the contradictory information flooding their shared network. Captain Steve Harris reported from the USS Ranger as his ship pursued the fleeing creatures through the asteroid field. Admiral, the enemy is behaving erratically. Some of their ships are trying to adapt to kinetic bombardment, while others are preparing for atmospheric combat. They can't decide which threat to prioritize, because we're hitting them with everything at once. Dr. Amy Collins was monitoring the virus she had introduced into the creature's communication network, and her readings showed something unprecedented. Sir, their collective consciousness is experiencing what can only be described as a mental breakdown. A shared intelligence system that made them so powerful is now working against them, as conflicting data streams create logical paradoxes they cannot resolve. But the victory celebration was cut short when Lieutenant Sam Davis received an emergency transmission from deep space monitoring stations. His face went pale as he processed the incoming data and turned to address Admiral Morrison with news. That changed everything. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting a massive enemy response force approaching from the galactic core. The biomechanical creatures we're fighting here were apparently just a scouting expedition. The main invasion fleet consists of over 300 entities, each one larger than anything we've encountered so far. Morrison felt the weight of the situation settle on his shoulders as he realized that humanity's tactical advantage might not be enough against such overwhelming numbers. Davis, what's the estimated arrival time for this main force? Sir, they'll reach Zilani space in approximately 18 hours. But Admiral, there's something else. The approaching creatures appear to be different from the ones we're currently fighting. These new entities are showing energy signatures that suggest they've already adapted to our unconventional tactics by analyzing the combat data from this battle. Commander Rick Thompson studied the long-range sensor readings with growing concern. Admiral, if these creatures can learn from the experiences of their advanced scouts, then our chaos tactics will only work once. The main invasion force will be prepared for everything we just used against them. Captain Lisa Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system from her position near the gas giant, where she was still hunting scattered enemy units. Sir, if our best tactics won't work against the main force, then we need to find something even more unconventional. What's more chaotic than chaos itself? Morrison looked around at his bridge crew and realized that humanity was about to face its greatest test. The biomechanical creatures had learned to expect unpredictable human behavior, which meant the humans needed to become even more unpredictable than before. But how do you surprise an enemy that has already seen your most surprising tactics? Doctor. Collins left her science station and approached the Admiral with an idea that would have been considered insane by any civilized species in the galaxy. Sir, I've been thinking about the nature of human warfare, and I believe there's one aspect of our military behavior that these creatures cannot possibly understand or adapt to. What aspect, Collins? Morrison asked. Sacrifice, sir. Every other species in the galaxy fights to minimize casualties and preserve their forces. But humans have always been willing to sacrifice everything, including their own lives, to achieve victory. The creature's collective consciousness cannot process the concept of deliberately choosing certain death as a tactical advantage. Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker was coordinating damage reports from across the fleet when he overheard Collins's suggestion. Dr. Collins, are you proposing suicide tactics? Not suicide, Parker, but something close to it, Collins replied. I'm suggesting we use our willingness to accept total loss as a weapon that the enemy cannot counter because their collective consciousness is programmed for survival and adaptation, not for self-destruction. Morrison understood immediately what Collins was proposing, and the tactical possibilities began forming in his mind. Collins, these creatures learn by absorbing and analyzing everything they encounter. But what happens if we give them something that destroys the analyzer along with the analyzed? Exactly, sir. We turn our ships into weapons that can only be used once, but deliver devastating results. The creatures will try to adapt to the attack, but the adaptation process itself becomes the weapon that destroys them. Captain Harris had been listening to the conversation while continuing his pursuit of enemy stragglers. Admiral, are you talking about ramming attacks? Because my crew and I are ready to take that step if it means stopping these things. Not just ramming Harris, Morrison replied. I'm talking about turning every human ship into a custom-designed weapon specifically created to exploit whatever weakness that particular vessel can find in the enemy forces. Some ships ram, others overload their reactors, others use their life support systems as chemical weapons. Over the next 12 hours, the human fleet underwent the most bizarre refit operation in military history. Engineering teams worked frantically to convert their vessels from warships into single-use weapons while their crews prepared for missions that none of them expected to survive. Captain Rodriguez had volunteered to convert her destroyer USS Lightning into what she called a gravitational mine. Her engineering team was modifying the ship's engines to create an artificial black hole that would consume everything within a 50-kilometer radius, including her own vessel. Admiral, Lightning is ready for final deployment, Rodriguez reported, with calm acceptance in her voice. When the main enemy force arrives, I'll position myself in the center of their formation and activate the gravitational collapse sequence. It should take out at least 20 of the larger creatures. Captain Harris was preparing his own sacrifice by converting the USS Ranger's entire ammunition storage into an exotic matter bomb that would create a chain reaction capable of destroying enemy ships across an entire star system. Sir, Ranger is prepared for final strike operations. My crew understands the mission parameters, and we're ready to execute when ordered. Dr. Collins had developed the most ambitious sacrifice of all by volunteering to upload her consciousness directly into the enemy's collective intelligence network along with a virus designed to convince the creatures that they needed to consume themselves to achieve perfect adaptation. Admiral, I'm ready to make the ultimate sacrifice, Collins announced. When I merge with their collective consciousness, the virus will spread to every creature simultaneously. They'll believe that self-destruction is the next stage of evolution. Morrison looked out at the approaching enemy fleet and realized that humanity was about to demonstrate why they had become the most feared species in their own solar system before ever meeting aliens. When survival was at stake, humans would sacrifice anything and everything to protect what they valued most. "All ships prepare for final operations," Morrison announced. "In 6 hours, we're going to show these creatures what happens when they threaten something that humans care about. They wanted to consume the galaxy, but they're about to learn that some prey fights back." The main invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts, their biomechanical hulls gleaming with absorbed Federation technology and adaptive armor plating. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant watching. 300 massive creatures arrange themselves in perfect formation as their collective consciousness analyzed the tactical situation with cold efficiency. Captain Danny Foster aboard the USS Vengeance had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of all. His ship had been converted into a delivery system for an experimental weapon that Dr. Collins called a consciousness bomb. The device would merge human unpredictability with the enemy's collective intelligence network in ways that would either save the galaxy or destroy everything in the process. "Admiral, Vengeance is in position at the edge of the enemy formation," Foster reported over the communication channel. "The consciousness bomb is armed and ready for deployment. Once I activate it, there's no turning back for any of us." Morrison looked around at his bridge crew and saw the faces of people who understood they were about to witness the end of one chapter of galactic history and the beginning of another. Lieutenant Sam Davis was monitoring communications from the Alcejus, surviving Federation forces, while Lieutenant Commander Ben Parker coordinated the final positioning of human vessels throughout the star system. "Sir, I'm receiving messages from Zelani refugee ships throughout the outer system," Davis reported. "They're asking if they should evacuate further or stay to witness what they're calling the final battle between order and chaos. Tell them to stay." "Davis," Morrison replied. "If we fail here, there won't be anywhere in the galaxy left to run. If we succeed, they'll want to see how it happened." Dr. Amy Collins had uploaded herself into a specially modified communication probe that would carry her consciousness directly into the enemy's collective intelligence network. Her physical body lay unconscious in the medical bay, while her mind prepared to wage war in a battlefield that existed only in quantum space. "Admiral, Dr. Collins is ready for consciousness transfer," reported Chief Medical Officer Linda Carter. "Once we launch the probe, her mind will be permanently merged with the enemy network. She won't be coming back, sir." Morrison nodded grimly as he watched the enemy formation begin its final approach toward the Zelani homeworld. "Collins understood the risks, Carter. Launch the probe when I give the signal." Captain Lisa Rodriguez had positioned her destroyer USS Lightning at the gravitational center of the enemy fleet, where her modified engines would create an artificial black hole. The weapon would consume friend and foe alike, but it would also eliminate the largest concentration of enemy forces in a single devastating attack. "Admiral, Lightning is ready for gravitational collapse initiation," Rodriguez announced with steady determination. "My crew has been evacuated to escape pods, but I'm staying with the ship to ensure proper detonation timing." Captain Steve Harris, aboard the USS Ranger, had filled his vessel with every piece of explosive material the human fleet could spare. His ship had become a flying bomb, capable of creating a chain reaction that would spread across the entire star system if properly positioned. "Sir, Ranger is prepared for final strike," Harris reported. "I've calculated the optimal detonation point to maximize damage to enemy forces while minimizing harm to the Zelani homeworld." Morrison felt the weight of command as he prepared to order the deaths of his finest officers and crew members. But he also understood that this was exactly the kind of moment that defined humanity's place in the galaxy. When extinction threatened, humans would sacrifice everything to protect what they valued most. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "Today, we show the galaxy that some things are worth dying for. Today, we prove that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our tactics, but our willingness to pay any price for the survival of those we protect." The biomechanical creatures began their final assault as their collective consciousness coordinated the most efficient destruction pattern possible. But their perfect planning was about to encounter something that no logical analysis could have predicted or prepared for. "Foster, launch the consciousness bomb." Morrison ordered. Captain Foster's ship USS Vengeance accelerated directly into the center of the enemy formation as the consciousness bomb activated. Dr. Collins's mind merged with the collective intelligence network and immediately began introducing concepts that the creatures had never encountered before. The virus she carried was not designed to destroy their shared consciousness, but to teach it something that would destroy them. "Rodriguez, initiate gravitational collapse." Morrison commanded. Captain Rodriguez activated her modified engines as the USS Lightning began creating an artificial black hole at the heart of the enemy fleet. 27 biomechanical creatures were caught in the gravitational field and consumed before they could adapt to the unprecedented weapon. "Harris, detonate the Ranger," Morrison ordered with a heavy heart. Captain Harris triggered his ship's explosive payload as the USS Ranger became a miniature star that burned away the organic components of 43 enemy vessels. The chain reaction spread through their formation like wildfire as absorbed Federation technology overloaded and exploded throughout their ranks. But the most devastating attack was happening in quantum space, where Dr. Collins was teaching the collective consciousness something that would change them forever. She showed them the concept of individual sacrifice for collective benefit, the idea that death could be chosen as a tactical advantage, and the human understanding that some victories required total loss. The biomechanical creatures began to experience something their collective intelligence could not process or counter. They started to understand that their perfect adaptation was actually a weakness because it made them predictable. They realized that their shared consciousness was a limitation because it prevented individual thought and creativity. One by one, the creatures began to choose individual existence over collective perfection. Their shared network collapsed as each entity decided to think for itself instead of following the group mind. Without their collective consciousness, they lost their ability to adapt instantly to new threats and became vulnerable to conventional weapons. Admiral Morrison watched in amazement as the most powerful invasion force in galactic history began to surrender, not because they were defeated in battle, but because they had learned something from humanity that changed their fundamental nature. Admiral Weir, receiving communication attempts from individual enemy vessels, Lieutenant Davis reported with disbelief. "They're asking for terms of surrender and requesting permission to leave Zelani space." Morrison looked out at the stars where human sacrifice had taught alien intelligence the value of individual choice over collective efficiency. The galaxy would never be the same because 3 humans had been willing to die to teach their enemies. But some things were more important than survival. "Grant them safe passage, Davis," Morrison ordered, "but make sure they understand that if they ever threaten peaceful worlds again, humanity will be waiting." The war was over, and the galaxy had learned what happened when Earth's most lethal fleet answered the call for help.